Vanishing Trails. The air hung thick and damp, a green curtain drawn tight around me. The forest, a cathedral of towering pines and gnarled oaks, had initially held a comforting stillness, the kind that only truly remote places can offer. I, Eric, had come seeking solace in its embrace, a break from the city's relentless clamor. Now, though, the silence felt heavy, a suffocating blanket woven with unease. I had been following a barely there trail, one that seemed to vanish and reappear with mocking regularity when I stumbled upon it. A clearing swallowed by shadows, a gaping wound in the forest floor. It was an abandoned campsite, but unlike any I'd ever seen. Tumbled around a dead fire pit were the remnants of what must have been a hasty departure, or worse. A pot lay toppled on its side, its contents, a thick congealed stew, spilled over the dead leaves. Beside it, a half-burnt journal lay open, its pages blackened and brittle. The scrawled handwriting within was frantic, bordering on illegible. I managed to decipher snippets. Shadows lengthen, cold, they whisper. The rest was lost to the flames. A chill, deeper than the forest's natural damp, crawled up my spine. Then I saw the bloodstains. Not many, just a few dark, ominous splatters on the moss covering a nearby rock. They looked disturbingly fresh, their rusty red a stark contrast to the vibrant green. An untouched loaf of bread, strangely pristine, lay beside them. It was a scene out of a nightmare, a tableau of terror frozen in time. I wanted to flee, to turn and run back down the vanishing trail, but a morbid curiosity held me rooted. With the sun beginning its descent, casting long, grotesque shadows, I reluctantly set up camp a short distance away. I ate a hasty meal, my appetite having vanished, and crawled into my tent before the last rays of light surrendered to the encroaching darkness. The forest, once silent, now seemed alive with whispers. At first, I dismissed them as the rustling of leaves, the sigh of the wind through the branches, but the whispers grew more distinct, closer, like voices just beyond the canvas of my tent. Then came the footsteps. Soft, almost hesitant, they circled my tent, padding on the leaf-strewn ground. I held my breath, heart hammering against my ribs, willing myself to believe it was just an animal, a deer perhaps. But there were no rustlings, no heavy breathing, no animal sounds. Just the soft, unsettling rhythm of footsteps that seemed to have no source. They were too light, too purposeful to be anything natural. I flicked on my headlamp, the beam carving a small circle in the overwhelming black, but revealing only trees and shadows, no presence, no explanation for the terrifying noises that were now swirling around me. Fear tightened its grip, a cold vice around my chest. I remembered the journal, the fragmented phrases, the talk of shadows and whispers. It dawned on me then with horrifying clarity that I was not alone. I was being stalked. Not by a man, not by an animal, but by something else, something inhuman. The whispers intensified, coalescing into a cacophony of sibilant sounds I couldn't quite understand. They seemed to be circling me, testing the boundaries of my sanity, like creatures probing a wounded animal. My throat tightened with a scream I couldn't release, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I lay there, frozen in a terror that was both primal and profound. The footsteps continued their relentless dance around my tent, an unseen predator circling its prey. The once welcoming forest had become a labyrinth of fear, and I, Eric, was lost in its nightmarish depths, stalked by something that existed beyond the realm of human understanding. I knew, deep in my bones, that this was not a place I was meant to survive. The vanishing trails had led me somewhere terrifying, and I feared they would never lead me back. The night was still young, and the shadows were just beginning to lengthen. The night stretched endlessly, each second an eternity, as I lay paralyzed in my fragile cocoon of nylon. The whispers outside my tent ebbed and flowed like an unholy tide, their tone fluctuating between soft, almost coaxing murmurs and guttural, unearthly growls. The footsteps stopped suddenly, plunging the forest into a silence so profound that it roared in my ears. I dared not move, barely dared to breathe, as I strained to listen. Every muscle in my body wound tight like a spring. For a brief, heart-stopping moment, I thought they had gone, that the nightmare had passed. Then the canvas of my tent caved inward ever so slightly. A faint pressure, as if something, someone, was pressing a hand or perhaps a face against it, testing its strength. The scream I'd been holding back ripped free then, raw and primal, piercing the suffocating darkness. In a panic, I lashed out, kicking blindly at the distortion. My foot connected with the fabric, and whatever had been pressing against it withdrew. The whispers resumed immediately, furious and discordant now, a cacophony of anger that seemed to echo through the trees. Scrambling, I unzipped the tent, the sound absurdly loud against the backdrop of unearthly noise, and burst out into the night. My headlamp caught glimpses of the forest, twisting branches, gnarled roots, shadows that seemed to move and shift with a life of their own. My breath came in ragged gasps, and I turned in frantic circles, trying to catch sight of what was pursuing me. Nothing. The forest was empty, eerily still, as if holding its breath. But the whispers were everywhere now, closing in, each one a knife slicing through my sanity. I staggered backward, my legs trembling beneath me, and tripped over something hard. The journal. It lay open at my feet, pages untouched by the earlier fire, pristine and stark in the beam of my headlamp. Words sprawled across the paper, written in a hand that wasn't my own, the ink glistening as though freshly penned. They see you. They know you. They will take you. The last word seemed to bleed across the page, the ink dripping unnaturally, pooling and spreading until it seeped off the edges and vanished into the ground. A low, guttural growl erupted from the trees behind me, and I spun, my light landing on nothing. But I felt it. A presence, towering, suffocating, ancient. It bore down on me with an intensity that made my knees buckle. The shadows between the trees began to coalesce, a darkness darker than night, shifting, writhing, forming shapes that didn't belong in any sane world. I ran. The vanishing trail mocked me with its erratic path, appearing and disappearing underfoot as I sprinted blindly through the woods. Branches clawed at my face and arms, roots threatened to pull me down, but I didn't stop. The whispers chased me, always just out of sight, their tone gleeful now, as if my terror was fueling them. And then I saw it, a faint glimmer of light ahead, flickering through the oppressive darkness. My chest heaved with hope as I stumbled toward it, desperate to escape. But as I broke through the last line of trees, my hope turned to ash. The clearing lay before me, the abandoned campsite. I was back where I'd started. The fire pit sat cold and dead, the toppled pot still spilling its contents onto the earth, the loaf of bread untouched, and the bloodstains on the moss. They were larger now, fresh and gleaming under the pale light of my headlamp. The whispers quieted, replaced by a single, guttural voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. "Welcome back, Eric." The shadows closed in, wrapping around me like a shroud. The last thing I saw was the journal, open and blank, waiting to tell my story. And then there was nothing. The end.